It is on. There it is. Okay. I'd like to call to order the May 24th, 2011 session of the Newport Beach City Council. May we have the roll call, please?
The record will reflect that Councilmember Rosansky is currently absent.
Thank you. Before we get to current business, I understand the city manager has someone he'd like to introduce to us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. I do have someone. It's a pleasure to introduce to you Kimberly Brandt. Kimberly Brandt is our new Community Development Director. I'm going to ask her to come up to the podium and say hi real briefly, tell her a little bit about herself. We know Kimberly quite well because she's our close neighbor, now she's part of us.
Thank you, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited to have this opportunity to work with a very energetic management team. And I come from the city of Costa Mesa, where I've spent the last 23 years, and I'm very familiar with a lot of the issues that both cities have shared over the years and are working towards resolution. I'm looking forward to working with all of you and with the community and the business community as well as we work forward to accomplish the vision for the city. I'm an Orange County native. I went to UCI. I have raised my family in the immediate area, and so this is really a very special place for me, and it's fun to be here, so thank you very much.
Very good, Kim. Thank you. Welcome aboard. We'll have plenty for you to do. Okay, very good. Well, let's move on to clarification items. Councilmember Daigle.
Yes, on number 5, the loud and unruly ordinance, apparently there is a provision between a tenant and the property owner that could, down the line, provide some relief for the landlord. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And is there a way that we can kind of communicate that, I suppose, far and wide? I know, for example, you do your sort of bi-monthly newsletter, but something that, because the landlords sort of vary from, multifamily places to, maybe someone renting a place for a short period of time.
Yes, Councilmember Daigle. Assuming this passes tonight at second reading, we have a public information plan that includes direct notification to any property owner and includes some proposed lease language that they may want to include in their rental agreements that helps cover that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Curry. And Councilmember Selich.
Nothing.
Councilmember Hill.
On the same item, number 5, we had talked last time about not only a notification, but the opportunity to send out some draft language notifying or to be included in a lease related to the existence of this code. Were any provisions made in that as far as the outreach program was concerned?
Yes, Councilmember Hill, they were, and that will be part of the outreach program. We'll have some draft language for them.
And the other item that we talked about was an attempt to communicate other than dropping a notice in the mail.
You mean the notice when there has been a loud or unruly gathering?
That is correct.
Yeah. As I understand it, we do have other options that we will pursue. We obviously want those folks to get the best notice possible, so I don't know that off the top of my head, but I'll make sure I get that back to you. Again, we'll use whatever means is appropriate and necessary to notify them as soon as possible.
And I understand the mail is required for the legal requirement
That's right.
of it. But
there are other ways, too. People could post a phone number or cell phone number near their door, register it with the city, those kinds of things.
Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Gardner.
Number 7, the ASBS grant. Who set out the terms for what's being performed? Did we or did the board, the Regional Water Quality Control, or the State Water Quality Control Board? Because I noticed that one aspect of it is dealing with the Los Trancos pond. And if we're having say in it, I'm questioning that we should be doing Los Trancos when we have Buck Gully, Little Corona, which has more use and has more impact on the tidal pond. So could we look into that and see if we have any flexibility there?
Yes.
And then the second part, number 8, the concession of Pro and Del Mar. I'm hoping that we've learned something from this procedure. It seems like it could have been handled better. We're going to have a summer without somebody in there. And are we hopefully going to make, in our new RFP, is that going to make us enough money to justify having turned down the first response to the RFP?
Well, we will have somebody there. That's our goal, is to have a concession there for the summer, not necessarily in the building. It could be an alternative outside. Our top goal for the summer, obviously, was to serve the beach-going visitors.
Right.
I do think that we've learned something from this process, and I guess it involves that our vision for that concession may not be the beachgoers' vision. And I think we recognize that, and we'll apply that to the next RFP to make sure it's basic beach fare and more flexibility in the hours to make sure someone will survive and prosper there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I have no items for clarification, so I think we're on to the budget discussion. Dave?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. So this is our second study session on the city's budget, and I apologize to the council. I'm going to go through a couple of things that the council has heard, but maybe some in the audience have not heard. After I speak, I'm going to turn that over to Tracy McCraner to go through most of the departmental recommendations. We're going to model this after what we did last year, where you won't have a series of department directors standing up and telling everybody what they do. We're really going to focus on the adjustments to the budget. So we will cover the budget principles and basically our budget approach this year. Then we'll go through the department budgets, and with a focus on what will the city council and what will the community notice as a result of these changes, some positive, some negative. We'll look at the capital improvement budget, or the capital improvement program budget, or CIP. That's where most of our infrastructure needs are built into. Then there are a couple of issues that we'll address and pull out from last time, and that is lifeguards, as well as just an update from the chief on police chief on two things, ABLE and DARE. And then looking ahead for folks in the audience, we're proposing one more study session about this on June 14th, and then a public hearing that night with possible council adoption. So council has one more meeting that they could adopt that at the 28th, but assuming we're ready to go, that's going to be our goal, to shoot for adoption on the 14th. So reminding you of the budget principles, we're trying to build on the prior year's actions and adhere to a fiscal sustainability plan that you folks adopted in January of last year. We are trying to change the way local government does business. We're trying to do that change in a thoughtful and deliberative way. We think that our city's long-term success depends on investment in infrastructure, so we should not be shortchanging that. Those are streets, parks, facilities. We also think there are things that we should not be doing, and you'll hear about a couple of those in this presentation today. Your council has recognized that the pension costs need to be addressed comprehensively and cooperatively with our employee groups, and that public safety remains paramount, but we need to be open to better ways of delivering those services. So as a reminder of what our problem is, I characterize it as an expenditure problem, not a revenue problem. We have fixed costs that are increasing, including pensions. That's the lion's share of that. Negotiated contracts and payroll requirements, those are agreed to MOUs. We have the facilities financing plan. That's an infrastructure investment plan, a good plan, but it's a fixed cost. We'll also have unemployment costs. There are folks that that amount will go up in light of a few layoffs. State cuts we have to absorb, relatively small compared to other cities, about $175,000 for library services. As the state budget is finalized, that looks like what our impact is going to be. Although I would do one important caveat. You saw where the Supreme Court yesterday directed California as a whole to readjust, to potentially let a whole bunch of offenders go, 44,000 some offenders. That will certainly impact us in a different way, if indeed that occurs. So we're already kind of looking at that issue. We have strategic needs that need to be funded. We're trying to increase our general fund contribution to infrastructure. We're also trying to increase our investment in information technology to be better, smarter, faster about what we do. So the budget preparation assumed about an $8 million increase in these categories, and the budget targets given, we're recommending close to that. And the difference is a little bit of revenue increase. So the result, even though we're talking about budget cuts today, and some revenue increases, the result is a slight increase in the overall budget, again, to accommodate those fixed costs. And this is a kind of a graphic presentation of what that looks like where you see if we were not to scale back on this red line, the red line shows where our costs would have been going, while the blue line shows where our revenues have gone. So this is our gap, and this budget proposes addressing that gap. And these include about $7.7 million in what I'm characterizing as adjustments, again, because some of them are reductions. You'll see we have staff reductions in many departments, reduce operating costs in many departments, increase revenues in some, and then some other, another category there, but about $7.7 million in the budget. I'm going to start first on we're going to begin to go through some of the departments. I oversee the city council and the city manager's budget, so I'm going to go over that. And starting just with the philosophy that I approach to, and that's to use contract services where we can. Also to reflect a current understanding of the city charter. I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. Also to adjust outside consultant use where appropriate to reflect changed needs. I know that's pretty general. You'll see some of the specifics here in just a moment. The city council's budget is impacted by bringing it down by about $45,000. This is a change in your benefit allocation. It's a deletion of a couple of benefits that the council members received, and this results from the council's February 8th, 2011 meeting where the mayor asked City Attorney Hunt and myself to review the city's charter to ensure that we are following correct processes and procedures as outlined in the charter. Not all cities have charters, but we do. As a result of this review, the city attorney determined that certain aspects of the benefits provided to the council were not addressed by the charter, and he concluded that these certain benefits should cease, and I've included these cuts in the proposed budget. There are a few other significant changes there. The budget includes membership in the Association of California Cities, Orange County, the State League, and SCAG. Try to say that 5 times fast. As well as some consultant services. Your airport consultant, Tidelands, and others come out of your budget. The city manager's budget will reflect about a $171,000 reduction. This is a reduction in some consultant services. It's also a different model for our video team. And we would continue to do video services, including the council's presentations, but under a different model, and we hope at a lower price. And we're developing a plan now based on input from our own video staff and from folks in the private and educational sectors. And the council's input is always welcomed in that model, too.
Is that including Channel 3?
It's Channel 3 and Channel 31, correct.
So I know that the Media and Communications Committee, which was sunsetted, that was an issue that we had been looking at. So as far as the programming, is there going to be an examination of the programming during the course of this?
We'd like to have a study session for you on that specific item when I'm working with Tara Finnegan on pulling that together.
Okay.
I think, yes, Mr. Curry.
Can you be more specific about the kind of changes we're talking about here? Because we're going to cut the budget, then we're going to have a study session to talk about what it's going to look like.
Well, I think the current model is inefficient. I think it causes. The current model is basically we have about 7 or 8 folks who work on an hourly basis, fairly random hours, because we have a very small little edit bay, which is right behind you here. And they get about $20 an hour, but the supervision is very challenging for one individual, and that's Tara. Tara has to supervise these folks that she won't always see because they work weekends and nights to take advantage of the edit bay. It's our suggestion to move that to a model, maybe a nonprofit, or a community college or another consultant or vendor that would wrap that up into one responsibility area. They'd run the bulletin boards, they'd staff the shows that were chosen, they'd hire the edit bay people, they'd hire the camera people. It's not a significant savings. We hope it will be in the range of $20,000 to $30,000 worth of savings, but we think it's certainly a more appropriate management model.
And what are we going to do between the time we adopt the budget and the time this model gets reviewed, approved, adopted, and implemented?
We may have the current model may maintain and plod along until we get the new model implemented. This is something that involves a lot of community input. It's a fairly minor budget item, but I did want to mention it. So envision a workshop or two as well as a study session. We've been talking with people in that field, too.
I'm fine with all of this as long as we don't cut Pick-a-Pet. Okay?
We wouldn't dare cut Pick-a-Pet. There's also in the city manager's budget, at least as allocated now, is to expand the emergency coordinator's role. This is Katie Ng, who's very good at grant writing, especially with FEMA grants, to expand that to cover other city grants that we work on. So we'll pile a few more things on her job duties, and that would be a citywide grant writing person. Again, with one individual who's already hired. And there's a possible checklist changes regarding a reclassification in 2 positions. But anyway, the net reduction is 171. So what will the community notice? We just talked about this, maybe a change in the way we'll run NBTV. We think we'll be able to increase expand our emphasis on effective communication with that new model. It may involve something different from something that is more expansive than the traditional TV shows, so website, social media, web streaming, et cetera. And hopefully we'll have more success at grant writing. And then, just as an aside, I think with the Association of California Cities, our membership there, you're already seeing a different approach on things than the State League provides. So with that, I'm going to welcome any questions on this specifically. You could also hold them to the end because we're just going to roll through the departments. But feel free to interrupt. So next.
Thank you. So next is the city clerk's office. Each of the slides you'll notice as we go to a new department will list the core responsibilities. I won't go over those individually, but they are there, and if you have any questions. We're really going to focus on the budget and realignment philosophies by each department and then what that means to you and the public. So with the city clerk's office, Leilani was looking at increasing the automation of records management. Again, looking at doing more with less, doing it faster, doing it automated. Also, increasing the customer service support to better serve the city council and the public. What that means is we're actually going to have a general fund budget neutral transfer. We currently have a department assistant in the city manager's office. They're going to take their responsibilities, move over to the clerk's office, and then also open up and assume additional responsibilities for public information requests. So what this will mean to the council and the community is they'll notice an increased customer support and faster response times for those various records requests. My department, Administrative Services, again, we were also looking at, and this council just approved, contracting out when it makes economical sense to do so without impacting the service to the community. And then looking at our infrastructure and technology and enhancing the service we provide to council, the departments, and the community, while also increasing city revenues and increasing our analytical capabilities. The budget impact was an overall reduction in operation costs of $237,000. This was made up of a reduction of $337,000 by outsourcing the parking meter operations crew, but then we also added a budget analyst. Again, increasing the analytical capacity. In working with all of the departments, we realized we really did need to bump up that analytical capacity for the recreation department, the city attorney's office, and also as we move towards more of a performance-based budget, we need to have somebody who's dedicated to help us get there. We had improved revenue. We estimate the low end at $200,000 a year. So the net impact to the general fund was $437,000, and that was through budget reductions or cost reductions and increased revenue. What does this mean
Could
to
you
the
provide more background on the analyst that's being added and what that person would do?
Oh, absolutely. So in working with the departments, both Recreation and City Attorney have said that they don't really have a budget analyst technical person that can help them with all things finance, budget related. So what we were doing is adding a position in my office that would help those two departments specifically, but would also be able to assist citywide with budget reconciliations, variance analysis, and performance-based budgeting review. So that budget position, it would be a new full-time position, and they would focus primarily on all things budget, helping all departments, but really focusing on the city attorney and recreation departments where they found a need.
So would the time be split between those two departments?
Yes.
Half a
Well,
week on
about
one,
half of the time would be split. Oh, sorry. Half the time would be split to the departments, and then the other half I would absorb in my department because they would be more citywide use.
Okay.
Okay. And what will the council and community notice? We've gone over the parking meters, so there's the increased revenue, better infrastructure, more payment options to the community. But this also did result in layoffs. We had 1 retirement, but 3 employees did need to be laid off with this contracting out. We have heard some concerns from the community. They were used to those people. They like those people. But Central Parking is well aware of our customer service standards, and they're willing to step up and, if not improve, at least meet that platinum level service that our community expects and deserves. And then on the budget analyst position, this would improve budget reporting for the public as well as for all of our departments, and it will help us to get to that next phase of the performance-based budgeting as well.
Are any of the people being laid off, would they be eligible for this new position, or are you going to have to just go out and recruit outside for that?
Our philosophy, Mr. Selich, has been to encourage people to apply for that position as someone who may be subject to layoff, but it is an open recruitment so that they have to earn that. We don't automatically transfer someone into that position.
One thing that might be helpful, because as we've gone along, there's been changes in public works and municipal operations where we have a director as a manager, and we have a consolidation, and we, fire plans getting reclassified. We have now budget and analysts, potentially assistant chiefs. If you could maybe put on one list all the new jobs, all the reclassifications, so we get some understanding of where the changes all are, because picking them up one by one is hard to follow.
Yes, and I appreciate that, Councilmember Daigle. For your June 14th meeting, we'll have a full discussion of position control and how one position may have changed to another, and then a lot of them will be taken off the books. Again, this is about a 36 or 37 net reduction in positions citywide.
Well, as usual, you're one step ahead of me. Thank you.
Thank you. In the city attorney's office, their philosophy was to increase efficiencies by reducing staff involvement, and the way they're going to go about that is developing written procedures and then improving training citywide so that their attorneys and support staff don't have to be called upon so much by the departments that they support. Not that they don't want to do that, but they're just trying to gain efficiencies through that training program. And then they're also looking at reducing the use of outside counsel when appropriate. The budget impact was a $339,000 reduction, and this was a combination. They eliminated a paralegal position, which was a vacant position in the department, and then they had a slight increase by reclassifying a department assistant to an administrative assistant. They needed more technical abilities in that level, but it was a net budget reduction of $78,000 in personnel. And then they also are proposing to reduce their outside counsel budget by $261,000 to obtain that $339,000 reduction.
How are they going to reduce the outside counsel budget? I mean, that's the number we put in every year, but then it just seems to be something that we react to. But anytime we have litigation or a special problem, we're always bringing on extra outside counsel. So, I mean, how realistically are we going to be able to control that?
Councilman Selich, essentially the focus was to bring more of the litigation in-house. One of our deputies, Kyle Rowan, has been focusing more on litigation as opposed to doing advisory work, and he's been focusing more on doing that litigation in the hopes of saving some of those outside counsel costs that were spent on litigation to outside counsel before.
And then what this council will notice most is obviously the operational cost savings by those reductions. Human resources and risk management. Their philosophy was to go out and contact all of their outside consultants and renegotiate those contracts wherever they could to reduce the professional services cost. They were very successful. The general fund impact alone was a reduction of $65,000 in their renegotiated consultant costs. I heard they overwhelmingly got positive support and reduced costs from all the consultants they contracted. And then also, in the internal service funds, they were able to reduce operational premiums and brokers' fees in both workers' comp and general liability to the tune of $331,000. This will eventually trickle down to the general fund, and the general fund being the primary contributor to those internal service funds, but you won't see those until future years when the next actuarial valuation is performed, but still a significant savings. So what the council and the community will notice is the reduced contract costs and more competitive contract bid prices when they come up for renegotiation. Community development has been undergoing a lot of reorganization, and we're excited to have Kimberly here to take over the reins. But the budget and the realignment philosophy is really focused on consolidating the planning, building, and code enforcement functions to obtain operational efficiencies and improve customer service. Also, automating and streamlining processes to assist customers with expediting their reviews and approvals. They had a great impact, a total net impact to the general fund of $800,000. That was a mixture of, they eliminated a director because they did the consolidation, so that was budget savings of $180,000. They also eliminated a building inspector for $129,000. So total operational savings of $309,000. And then they noticed a big increase in their permit and planning and building activity for community development. And so far for fiscal year 2011, it looks like we're going to exceed budget by almost $500,000 in that area. That was not due to fee increases. That was just due to workload. So because of the improvements that they've made in the efficiencies and how they process applications, they're able to perform more work with the same staff at the same fees, but they've recognized an increase of almost $500,000, and that is expected to continue for 2012. So that was a big reduction there.
How are we going to handle on community development the local coastal implementation plan? We haven't done anything on that for almost a year. It's somewhat of an expensive process to do. We're paying the Coastal Commission a $1,000 a month fine, which is $12,000 a year, so it seems it's almost less expensive to keep paying the $12,000 a year and not do the local coastal plan. So what are the plans and how does it fit into this budget?
It's a good question, Councilmember Selich, and I know that there are some, maybe many, that prefer that we would just keep paying that $12,000 a year in light of the challenge associated with getting our LCP approved. I'm going to ask Kimberly Brandt to take an analysis with staff of that and report that back to you shortly, because I think off the top of my head it needs a little bit more of a detailed analysis to bring back to you.
They
Okay,
are
well,
on-
excuse me, Councilman Legal. It's a pretty expensive proposition. I mean, we spent over $1 million on the zoning code, I know, and this is, well, maybe not as technically detailed. It's certainly going to be as challenging as the zoning code was, so it's not going to be a cheap thing to do.
We do keep a budget amount in community development for consultant services like that. We'll need to evaluate with Kimberly on board whether or not that's the right amount for it.
There is a significant turnover going on right now with the Coastal Commission, the commissioners. There's 4 or 5 members.
Okay. Thank you. And what the council and the community, I think, have already noticed is an improvement to customer service, increased revenue, and operational cost savings. And I can even say myself, I'm even getting kudos to the Community Development Department mailed to me for the increase, because they'll visit the cashier's booth or something. So I do know there's been a big recognition by the community of these improvements. Our library. The budget and realignment philosophy for the library was to institute sustainable cost reductions while continuing their platinum level customer service. Everybody knows that our libraries, our 4-star library system, there's nothing like it. And maintaining funding to provide relevant materials and databases, and then reevaluating the staff schedules to maintain service hours and programming without impacting customer service. Library was able to come up with $249,000 in budget reductions. This was through the elimination of vacant positions, eliminating 3 part-time positions, which did result in layoffs, and then reducing part-time hours. So the effects to the community is actually, we're hoping that nobody will see any negative impacts. The library staff is obviously going to be assuming more work, but there will be no reductions to collections or programming at any of the libraries.
Does this include taking into recognition the state money that's not coming?
It does, yes.
Are all the library hours going to remain the same then? No changes to our existing library hours?
Right now, we're proposing keeping them the same, yes.
Right. We're going to increase remote access to library resources, but continue that platinum level customer service. So really, there should be no impact to the community, even though we were able to look at the staffing and scheduling.
And the Balboa Library Branch will
Remains
open and
open.
operating as it has in the past, right?
Yes.
For the
I have an
record,
idea
yes,
for
so
you.
we'll second the yes.
Public Works. Their budget and realignment philosophy was continued focused on outcomes, getting the right people in the right places, modernize and streamline processes for efficient project delivery, and also utilizing new technologies. And what Mr. Badum has said, he's getting us prepared for how we will conduct business in the new City Hall. Then reapportion and tracking of costs required to move to a better performance-based budget. We were able to achieve $558,000 in budget reductions. This involved eliminating a senior engineering technician and a public works specialist. This does have the potential for layoffs of staff. We had salary savings from a vacant public works inspector. And then we also are looking at the way that we account for costs that the engineering department performs. These are direct project costs to the water and sewer CIP. Unlike most cities, we were just absorbing those in the general fund when they really should be allocated on a direct basis to those CIP projects. And as we move forward with our IT strategic plan, we're hopeful that we'll get a better accounting system that can really track project costs. But right now, they're going to have to do a manual review to make sure that those direct costs are tracked and then allocated appropriately.
So what you're saying is the money's going to come from the Water Enterprise Fund?
Yes.
With regard to the salary savings from the vacant position, you mean that position was eliminated in the budget? It was vacant and it's been eliminated, or it's just going to be held vacant?
Tracy just told me something and I didn't understand. Steve, you have a comment on that? There you go.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, well, we're holding it vacant for now. We anticipate next year possibly eliminating the city surveyor position and then bringing the vacant inspector back. Right now, there seems to be a little lull, and we're able to help fill that need with consultant outside help, and we'll reevaluate the situation next year. We think if we're getting on okay, we'll go ahead and permanently delete that position. If not, we'll come back to you and have a discussion about if we keep that position or not next year.
When you say that position, you're talking about the surveyor or the inspector? You lost me there.
Oh, the inspector, I'm sorry. The inspection position, we're going to go without for a while to see how that works and kind of reprogram, rejuggle our work. We do have a lot of work going on still with the city surveyor position. The thought was to keep that position for one more year and then reevaluate next year and probably eliminate that position and then bring back the vacant inspector position, fill that position.
What kind of surveying is the surveyor doing right now?
Well, essentially, most of the work that he's doing right now is involved with actually mapping. It's actually not going out into the field. All of that work, the field work, has been contracted out previously. What the city surveyor does now is he's essentially the person who looks at all of our parcel maps, our tract maps, whatever comes through, because according to current state law, the public works director or city engineer licensing cannot sign for maps. So we use the city surveyor to sign for those maps. We can contract out that service, but right now we're also dealing with a lot of property issues, some of them involving with the Irvine Company, properties that weren't properly transferred when we annexed land from the city of Irvine, and a couple of other property disputes that are ongoing right now. So we thought we'd spend the next year kind of cleaning up those property issues and then reevaluate whether or not we need the city surveyor position next year.
Okay, thanks.
I really think the better way to handle that vacant position is to eliminate it and then propose to add it if you conclude at a later date you need it.
I was expecting you might say that, so that's certainly the council's prerogative, yes. We might bring it back to you that way.
And what will you notice? Well, there will be the reduced operational cost. There will be a proper cost allocation to ensure accurate accounting treatment for all of our CIP projects. However, as I said, this does have the potential for layoffs. And so therefore, in our transition period, there may be temporary reduction in services during that period, but overall, we feel that this will result in a more effective workforce. There just might be a timing as we get people trained up. Some people are going to have to assume additional responsibilities, as with other departments. But so we think that is just a temporary inconvenience.
What kind of services do we think might be reduced?
Steve?
I think what we're really talking about is the speed of which we put the capital projects out. So the folks that are being eliminated from the budget, those positions that are being eliminated from the budget are directly related to putting CIPs out on the street. So while we rejuggle and reshuffle work, there might be a small gap in transition. Some of the projects might lag behind a little bit, but we're hopeful that won't happen. But we just want to point out that could be the case.
And we move on to, I'm sorry.
I was just going to note that hope is not a strategy. We need to make sure that we address it appropriately to make sure it gets done properly.
Thank you. So Recreation and Senior Services, their philosophy was to continue to diversify the recreational opportunities for our community while minimizing the impact they have to the general fund. Maintain the enrichment programs that provide ongoing enhancements for the community versus some of the one-time special events that we have hosted in the past. We had a combination of budget impacts. The Recreation Department was able to reduce maintenance and operational costs, but because of the popularity of all the OASIS programs, the rec classes, the facilities rentals, everything, we increased revenue projections for next year by the tune of $388,000. In order to do that, though, we did have to add some contract instructors, and we had some increase in utilities costs for OASIS. So that was an increased operational cost of $230,000, but the net impact was a positive impact to the general fund next year of $266,000. What will the community and council notice? Obviously, additional classes and programs that are being offered at OASIS. We'll have the increased revenue. The revenues more than offset the increase to the instructor costs. But we will have the elimination of Winter Wonderland and the Egg Hunt, those one-time special events. We felt that those were taking away from those more ongoing community events and enhancements that the entire community was enjoying.
Let's see, higher revenue, lower cost. Maybe Parks and Rec should be an enterprise fund. What do you think?
If anyone can do it, Laura can.
Okay.
Municipal operations. Their philosophy, they had many. They're merging the utilities and the general service departments. This allowed Mark to evaluate its staff and equipment required to perform core services, therefore reducing duplicate equipment and reassigning staff within the department. It involved staff taking on more responsibilities in two areas, but they maintained the integrity of the enterprise funds. Now he's in charge of the water and the wastewater funds. So contracts, he's still looking into contracting where private firms will be able to provide a service at a reduced cost. Some of those items that he's looking at for next year are streetlight maintenance, janitorial services, and the beach bin collections. The third philosophy was maintain responsiveness and quality of service levels when providing those core services to our customers. A couple of those listed here obviously are water and wastewater services and beach maintenance, and of course the residential refuse collection and emergency response for the storm response. Keeping with this, he was able to come up with $1.6 million in budget reductions. This was a lot of work in looking at how we can do business differently. On the maintenance and operations side, we had continued contract savings from street sweeping, fleet replacement and maintenance. He was able to get rid of that duplication of fleet equipment because of merging the departments, and the field maintenance. Those were all contract savings. In looking at contracting out restroom maintenance, we did have a small increase for that new contract to the tune of $100,000. But overall, a net budget reduction of $654,000.
We're one of the few cities, I think, that owns its own streetlight system. Is that something, an asset that can be sold off, or is it an albatross that we're stuck with because historically we have one, and is there any potential cost savings there?
Mr. Selich, I'm not quite sure who would take it from us, because I think we probably would give it back to Edison if we could, because the substantial cost includes all the electricity. I still think, and I may be the only one in the room, that we could probably could and should look at pulling out a number of lights where we're overlit at night. And actually, as Public Works notes, a lot of cities, when they have the capital to do so, are moving towards a whole different model for street lighting, where you do have the ability to leave them on, say, between 6 and midnight, and then turn them off the rest of the time. You also have an ability to have a police car come by and turn them all on, because that's the issue with turning them off late at night. So if we can improve our technology with each street light, we could probably really improve those processes. But know that we do look at those kinds of things. I don't know if Mark has, or Steve has any other comments, but That's staff's perspective.
With regard to fleet maintenance, does this include police department vehicles, or is this all other?
It's all other. It does not include police.
On the restroom maintenance contract, is that a one-time hit, or is this something that we did more cheaply than the outside contractor can do, or what?
No, actually, the restroom maintenance, this is what we anticipate. We don't have the numbers yet. This is like a placeholder. We anticipate a contract to take care of the restrooms to be about $100,000. We should have that number. I think bids close. We put an RFP out there. Bids close in a couple of weeks, so we'll have a better idea. But the three positions on your chart there, the facility maintenance workers, the three positions at $240,000, that's the crew that's currently doing the work. So we eliminate the $240,000. That's just the payroll. There's equipment and everything else. We eliminate that cost, pick up a cost of $100,000.
Yeah, that one. Okay. And then on the personnel side, he had some significant restructuring, again, with the merge and consolidating and the potential outsourcing. He's going to go down 8 positions overall for savings, a budgetary savings of $973,000. That also includes looking at overtime to reduce the overtime budget. But it does, like he just said, the facilities maintenance 2 workers, the 3 positions valued at $240,000. That's the personnel savings side, then offset with the possible contracting side of $100,000. And with that, what will the council and community notice? Will there obviously be reduced operational cost, a more efficient use of the city vehicles, increase in services contracted out. But again, we just want to say there might be an increase in response times due to removing the 8 positions and the possible contracting out while we move through the transition, and possibly less quality of service due to the reduction of the city work team.
Mark, can you just give us a quick update on the new CNG facility and utilization by outside people buying CNG there? How's that going?
I certainly can. I don't have the gallons, the gallon equivalent to quote, though the last report I remember seeing was a couple thousand gallons through that station in a month. So the outside agencies, taxi cabs, refuse haulers, they're using that station. I think more than the company that put the station in expected. It's a big success. I'm glad you asked that question, though. I want to touch on something. The last load of diesel fuel that we received was just under $4. It was like $3.998 or something. So $4 a gallon for diesel fuel. Our current cost for CNG, I believe, is $1.39 per gallon equivalent. So as we move forward with consolidating the fleet, becoming a more streamlined fleet, we'll continue looking at the alternative fuels too. So, it's a good deal there.
So, Mr. Mayor and Council, this concludes our discussion of the departments. I'm going to wrap up, though, with what we're going to move to then next is the CIP. And then we're going to talk about some holdovers from last time, including Able, Dare, and lifeguards. This is, again, a general fund picture where we are. You'd see that we do expect to close the year balanced right here. We expect to close next year balanced as well. So, again, here's our year end. Here's our next year's balance. So what we've talked about today, added to the police and fire reductions 2 weeks ago, make up that about $7.7 million change. So again, with a balanced budget, I think we're still protecting critical services. We're restructuring the organization, eliminating about 35 positions. That will result in probably about 19 layoffs. We're trying to reduce that where we can through attrition. This is an organization where you have attrition at any time. It provides more money for facilities, streets, and roads, does not use reserves, and it does ask for continued progress next year, including contracting out and pension changes. And with that, on your agenda today also is something I think the public looks forward to and you look forward to, and that's a discussion of our capital improvement program. Dave Webb with the Public Works Department is going to take that from here.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. Yes, thank you for the opportunity to bring the CIP to you tonight. Let's get set up here. Thank you. To start off with just some background for folks, what the Capital Improvement Program is. The Capital Improvement Program is an important document. It serves to develop and construct our major public works improvement projects and also significant maintenance items. We also use the CIP to set priorities and appropriate funds for these projects. We use it as a basis of a planning tool and help identify conflicts in our programs. And also the thing important to remember about a CIP is it's an evolving document. It changes. We can add to it. We can delete to it. For instance, we could put remove a building and build a parking lot in it if we need that direction. So we have flexibility there. I get often asked, how do these projects come about? And I wanted to let, for the TV viewers and the folks in the audience, the projects come out of the CIP come out of certain categories. Particularly the CIP has a lot of projects that come out of our master plans, and we have several of them. We have the facilities replacement plan that you've seen. You recently saw the pavement management plan. We updated the water master plan, and we have the sewer master plan in the update right now. These plans develop projects and show long-term what we need to do for various infrastructure improvements. We also use it with council goals and objectives. We'll put projects together based on those. We also hear from the community or staff or something will be going through the community and see a need for projects, so it'll be identified out of that. And sometimes we have just state and federal requirements, also maybe a legal action, like we just had one on Balboa Island where we had to add handicap ramps and address some ADA compliance. So it ends up in the CIP and we develop those projects.
Don't we also have I forget, it's either a 5 or 7 year plan with OCTA on all our road improvements on the arterial highways?
Absolutely. And this next slide this is our pavement management plan, and this is found on our website. Sorry you can't really see it well, but what you're seeing is colors there. We actually plan our pavement well ahead, and we're in the orange right now, East Bluff area, Santa Ana Heights. Our next layer we'll be going to next year is our red areas, which is Newport Center, Upper Corona Del Mar, Cameo Highlands, the Corona areas. We plan this well in advance, and with this program we also look at other improvements like water lines and sewer lines. How can we get those in before we repave roads? So it's very complex, but we do have plans that drive our CIP projects, and OCTA feeds right into this.
Dave, did all of the magenta area and the Port Streets and Spyglass, did that all get completed on time, or is that still to be done?
I believe it's in the process. We've recently, we did Spyglass on Hill. That was last time. We're in East Bluff right now, and that's coming up, so Spyglass should be done.
All right, what about the Port Streets?
I'm guessing I believe that was last time, and I'm sure it's on schedule. I know we did concrete work there just recently, and they came back with the slurry project, so it should be up to speed.
Okay.
Dave, that diagram's a little bit hard for me to read, and I see a real heavy concentration. It looks like brown on Balboa Island. What does that mean?
Well, Balboa Island, there's a little red there. You see two streets on the little island. The streets on Balboa Island are primarily concrete, and those have not been programmed in here yet. We do have a concrete program, and you'll see some red if you look towards Bay Avenue. Island Avenue is currently in orange and being done right now. So there are various concrete streets in there, but there are other ones that are not currently funded. We have to work on that. And Balboa Island we're looking at specifically because we have a lot of things that we need to do on that island, and then we'll program it in the future. The other thing we want to do with the CIP project is obviously address council priorities. Two of the ones that come up, the first one is revitalization. We're using that to build parks and recreational facilities that we feel we need to help revitalize the area. Civic Center is in there. We're improving traffic flow. That's one of the major areas we're trying to do around the city. Rehabilitating aging infrastructure is an important thing in certain areas of town. The peninsula has been brought up, West Newport and some others. Balboa Island is another area. And also we can use this as a tool to encourage private redevelopment. If you recall, recently we did Via Lido. We rehabbed that area, and hopefully that'll foster the street improvements, will help foster some redevelopment. We bought the Balboa Market and did a parking lot down there to help foster that area. So you can use this as a tool for that. The other area of emphasis is we're looking at tidelands. And we've got dredging efforts in the CIP, the harbor, Rhine Wharf, Simic Slough. We've got areas to improve water quality that are built in here. We're also funding beach maintenance, sand maintenance, growing repairs, bulkheads, and we're also doing improvements in the Balboa Yacht Basin. So before we go forward, I'd like to take a little look back at how this year has come out. With the conclusion this year, we're looking to be basically delivering 20 planned projects for about $17 million. With that planned projects, those are in last year's CIP, there's a host of things that aren't in those planned projects. Assessment districts, all kinds of little things. We had anywhere from monument signs being knocked out on Mariners Mile to Newport Boulevard, to trailers being removed, to walls being repaired that are hit by cars and things. So there's a host of other things that aren't in the CIP that are done. But with this, we also have 2 performance measures I work with on the CIP. The first one has to do with scheduling, and what we've committed to is basically delivering 85% of the projects within 2 months of our baseline schedule. Every year when we adopt the master plan, or the CIP, we also set up a whole year schedule in advance for all the projects, and we post that on the website. If you go to our Public Works website, you'll see the projects and their construction schedules. The year-to-date summary of that shows that we're 99% within that. We've done a real good job in completing things on time. The next one is on budget. We've committed to, and this is very aggressive on my part, I want to push them, but it's 95% of the projects within the contract amount plus the 10% contingency. Year to date, we're at 90%. It's a pretty good achievement. We didn't hit our mark so far at 95%, but I've got a slide to kind of give some examples of that. Here's a summary of most of the projects, the big ones anyway, that we did this year. And you'll see various, you have the project name, the cost there, and also there's the, next to it, you have the date here when we came in, plus or minus months, so we're tracking that, and we're tracking the cost, and you'll see like this one's at 8.5%. Here's a case where we went 16% above the contract cost. Good reasons for this. If you recall, when we took this project and got it awarded, we asked for additional money because our asphalt prices at the time were so great, we ended up paving additional streets. So we went above and beyond to take an opportunity to put some more asphalt in the street at a good cost. So if you look at some of the others, Carroll Beak, we got into Carroll Beak, it's 13%. Small project, $80,000, it went up to 96. A lot of rehab, obviously, getting the buildings there. We did cabinets, lighting, and things like that. We had to do a little bit more in there, so it's a small dollar. But you see a lot of successes here. We've had Lido Island paving, we're down below. Oasis in there, 2%. Overall, it was a great delivery, knowing that we got great prices this year, and we intentionally went ahead and tried to capture some of those good prices.
What's the next steps with your with the traffic signal monitors?
I actually have some slides. If you give me just a second, I'm going to come right up and show you a summary on that. But looking at projects that we finished this year, just to remind the audience and folks, we had the Oasis Center. We ended up doing the roof down at the lifeguards. We had some issues with that roof. There's the Carroll Beak Center. We put the new cabinetry in and refurbished it. San Miguel was one of the projects done in correlation with City Hall coming forward and trying to work on a critical traffic improvement in that intersection. River Avenue was another shining star. This is the paving portion of it after the landscape was done. We had new medians done in Avocado. We also did some of West Cliff. We redid the medians up there. The Balboa parking lot, which we put in, I think that's come out as a success, and the community's enjoying that parking improvement. Another area, we had assessment districts and undergrounding, and this is 8099. I just point out it for the community enhancement. The top picture shows kind of the alley before we got to it with the new pavement. Now you can picture that also with all the utility lines. We had just taken the poles out here. The bottom is the end product where we've got a new alley in there. The utility lines are gone. It's all spiffed up. And that's really enhancing some of the areas on the peninsula that have taken on the assessment districts. We've done playgrounds. We're doing refurbishment of the padding underneath the playgrounds. And also we have this test here going on where we floated this dock and all these folks didn't get wet. So we had a success on that in the Rhine Wharf. We do pier maintenance. This is one of the specialized pieces of equipment they use to get underneath there. We also have divers that go down every 2 years and look at our piles and make sure we're staying up with that. Specialized products like that. And also this year we did a reclaimed water project. We did East Bluff and Bonita Creek Park. We switched them over to reclaimed water to do a little water efficiency. And the other thing about the CIP, it's a fluid document, but it doesn't stop on June 30th and start July 1st. It has a lot of projects that are ongoing, and this is our encumbrance list. We have $40 million encumbered correctly. Actually, this is higher now. I understand City Hall wasn't in it. There's $85 million in City Hall, but we have a lot of encumbered projects that are moving over the fiscal year, and these are underway right now, and the money's tied up in bringing, obviously, the Civic Center forward, Marina Park, and Sunset Ridge are going through the permitting process, wayfinding signs, things like that. Just a note, too, and Councilmember Selich brought up streetlights. On here, you'll see there's a streetlight rehabilitation project. We've aggressively been going into that the last couple of years. I want to thank the city manager for funding that because I think it's paying off. I heard today we got a note back from Edison. We just recently did Harborview Hills, and our monthly Edison rate has gone down $1,200 a month by the 138 lights we switched out in there, plus the fact that the lights need to be changed out about 10 years further out. So we're seeing savings on that. The answer to the question is it make sense for us to own our own system, and I think it does. When I talk to other cities, by owning our own system, we get a different rate. We can put them on meters, we can take advantage of cost efficiencies, where when you don't own it, Edison owns the light, basically you pay a per light fee, and they don't, if you put an LED light on it, you don't get a break on it. It's just a per light fee. We also have the ability to go after grants and other things, and as Mr. Kiff mentioned, we have the ability to, and we probably do this in the future, work our lighting system different than Edison would. They just turn them on all night and, you know, you pay the rate. Some cities have gone to timers where some lights cut off. We just recently had a project where we took out every other light, and it's worked out great in the community, and basically same result. Luminaires is the same. They're LED lights now. They're a better pattern, but we're saving on not having every other pole there. So there's ways that we can use that to our advantage. So just a side note there.
Dave?
Yes.
Of the $40 million of ongoing, are any of those in any kind of financial trouble? Are they all tracking as you anticipate?
As far as I know, they are. There's the biggest one there, City Hall, and that's right on schedule and on budget. All the other ones, there's no financial problems on that. This chart here is I like to throw it in, it's kind of a summary of our 10-year CIP, and just so you can understand the lines here. The bottom line there is basically the white is our rebudget amount. And that's the projects that carry over every year. We have a lot this year that we thought we might award in June. They might end up being awarded in July. That would be a carryover project, or just take that money and move it into next year's budget. The blue line is the new money that's being added into the budget, and then obviously the gold line is the summation of the two. It's the rebudget and the new money. And then we track basically this red line, which is the final year-end budget. You notice it's been climbing. But the last couple of years, we've had significant increases, and this year, this big spike here from here to here is basically City Hall. In February, if you recall, we encumbered $85 million into that project. The year before was Oasis. We put about $10 million into that project mid-year, and it wasn't shown in the original budget. So you see these spikes, and obviously the facilities are adding a lot of money to this. So getting into this year, coming up, I want to show what we're proposing in. We have basically $51 million worth of projects, 60 projects. $26 million is going to be new funding. $25 million will be rebudget. We have areas in facilities, and the big projects in facilities, obviously, the Civic Center. We're looking to do the lifeguard headquarters. We're going to start the concept design. That's probably a long project because it's in the coastal zone. We'll need to do coastal permits, et cetera. So start the concept, maybe the design work, multiple-year project there. We have money in for our major facilities replacement planning. As you know, we've been talking about what we're going to do with City Hall sites, the yards, and things like that, so we need to do some more work there. And also the yacht basin, we have some improvements we'll be doing there.
If I could interrupt you one more time. Just a matter of semantics. We talk about the new Civic Center. It's the Civic Center and Park, and the park is a major portion of that expense. So I think we just need to keep that up front.
Yes, thank you for correcting me. I was taking the shortcut there, but the park is a major part of that. And also the library is involved in that, too. Under streets and drainage, we're putting $16 million into this program. Most of that's in street work, $14 million, and we have some minor drainage items for $1.4 million we'll be looking at. In streets, we have several programs, arterial highways, and these are the arterials we'll be hitting. Jamboree Road, we've started the bridge project funded this year. Next year, we're looking to do the intersection of Jamboree and MacArthur. That's the first project. We're going to start the designs of Dover Drive. The Sand District have a large trunk main coming up in there. We want to get ahead of that and get the design going for replacement of Dover from Irvine all the way down to the highway. And then also on the peninsula, we've got some designs we're starting to work on Channel and Balboa. We also need some major arterial replacements, probably more than Mark's group can do. We're out in the middle of travel lanes, so we put a project together next year that'll handle South Bristol, Jamboree, and also Newport Coast has some major modifications on what we need to do. And then we did apply, and it looks like we will get one project here, Newport Boulevard. So we have some money in for design next year. This is to basically try to add a third lane going off the peninsula, starting at 30th, and bringing a third lane down from Violito down to 32nd Street. Do a lot of local streets.
Dave,
yes.
the Corona Del Mar bid had asked that the squeeze lane on Coast Highway be included in the CIP program for design, and they offered half of the design money, and I noticed it isn't on the list. Was it considered and rejected, or what?
We could do that.
We put it on a checklist. We'll speak to that in a moment.
This was put together and printed before that item came up at the Revitalization Committee. We'll have our annual slurry seal program this year. In fact, I'll note the current proposed budget in your hand has the wrong description. The actual areas we're going to be looking at are Harborview Hills, Camino Highlands, and also Corona Highlands will be the areas to be slurried. 15th Street needs to be reconstructed. We also have other pavement towards the Newport Center. We're going to be looking at the Loop Road and also slurring the outer streets in that area. Peninsula Point, we have money in there to do the alleys after the assessment district that went in there. And also Bay Avenue from 15th down to about Island, we'll be looking to replace that. And again, the good news is the streetlight rehabilitation project. In fact, we just had bids come in today for this year's project, and they were very good. We came in about $200,000 below our estimates, so we'll be able to add that money next year and do more LED energy improvements. Under drainage, there are a couple projects we're looking at. There's a couple storm drains, one on Bayside Drive up by Carnation we need to look at. And also there's an opportunity, the storm drain that comes off Riverside Drive across the highway, there's a development going through, and we need to upsize the pipe going across PCH and into the harbor.
When you say modification of the Carnation Street drain, do you mean make it bigger? Do you mean filter it? What kind of modification?
It's a hydraulic deficiency in the drain itself. There's kind of a pinch point when it comes around the corner there and heads down Bayside Drive, as I understand. So we want to clear that up to help it from not backing out the drains and flowing down the street. We'd have to detail that a little bit more, but that's what the CIP has reported. Also, we have tide gates retrofits in here, and we're starting something new. We've been working with Mark Harmon's group. We have a lot of old hand-driven tide gates, but we've gone to a new kind of a rubber synthetic tide gate, and you'll see one down at the end of Seashore Drive. We put one in there, and we just finished one on Pearl, and we're finding great success with it. It's an automated gate. It works on the hydraulic principle, so we don't have to send a crew out and lower the tide gates. We're having success, so we want to try that further on Balboa Island to help reduce the man hours that go into turning those gates consistently. And there's one other tide gate. There's 19th Street is a heavily used one. We're going to try to do a new automated gate there, maybe a backup pump. We have money in the CIP this year for debris basins. We've applied for OCTA grant funds to add CDS-type structures in our storm drains. We've got 5 grants in. Hopefully we'll hear by June, maybe July if we have that. This would be the money to match that. 50/50.
Is this, what, low-flow season or all year-round or what?
This would be year-round. They'd be inflow year-round. Traffic, and this gets to Councilmember Daigle's. I've got your information in here, but we are coming into Phase 5 of our traffic modernization. As you recall, back in 2008, we had a heavy push to try to really modernize our signal system. We're going to put another $2.4 million in there. Phase 5 is the Newport Center, and we hope to get that done. Actually, it's designed. We hope to get it out to bid here and awarded in the summer. We also have traffic signal rehabilitation. We've got a lot of signals we have to keep rewiring and redoing because they get old and they start getting faulty. There's a new law that came in effect, too, on our signs. They are requiring us to maintain a certain reflectability on our signs. So we're going to go ahead and start the inventory, hopefully remove some signs that aren't necessary, add them where we need to, check the reflectability of it, and come into compliance. I think it's 2014 we have to be in compliance. And then there's a little money in there for additional striping markings that come up throughout the year, for instance, the sharrows and things like that. Just a summary background on our traffic signal modernization. If you recall, we did Phase 1. That was completed back in March 2009, and that was East Coast Highway, MacArthur, and Avocado. We followed up with Phase 2 and 3 right behind that, and that was completed in December of 2009, and that took care of Jamboree Road in the airport area. We just recently completed Phase 4 and 7, which was Irvine, Dover, and Superior, and the Peninsula. And we just brought that online, and we're having great success. We've been looking at that through our Traffic Operations Center. In fact, the mayor was out, and we showed him all the cameras and how we're making improvements on the traffic flow off the peninsula. And the phase coming up is Phase 5, as I mentioned. That's the Newport Center. We hope to have that done and completed by November of 2011. Trying to get in, and we've been working with the Irvine Company to get in before the Christmas season will be done. And then the last 2 phases are Phase 6 and 8. And these phases are not designed yet. We're looking to try to capitalize on any kind of OCTA grant funding. They do have money now out for coordination, so we'll look for opportunities to bring that into and save some money on these phases.
What do we think the expected schedule is for Phases 6 and 8? Timing?
I haven't worked that out yet. They could be, design usually takes about 6 months and then another 6 months to construct. So what I'd really prefer to do, if I can find some grant money to match it up. These aren't our most critical streets. Newport Coast runs really well. San Joaquin Hills is not really bad. But they definitely need to be done. So if it's okay, I'd like to try to see if I can get some grant money in a year or two. And if not, we can just go ahead and do them.
Okay.
We're also doing work in the harbors, beaches, and that area. We've got about $19 million. This is a pretty big program. We're looking, obviously, with the two big parks in here, Marina Park and Sunset Ridge. As I mentioned, they're going through the coastal permission process right now to try to get our permits. We have money in there for a new study that we're looking at for a new pier area over towards where the Reuben E. lease sat. This is something Chris Miller's been working with the Harbor Commission on. We also have additional money in there to do more bulkhead repairs and also growing rehabilitation, particularly on Balboa Island. And then there's money in there for dredging if we can work on the lower in the Rhine Channel. And there's a study going on currently on Seminole Slough. We're hoping to get that funded by the Corps. There's also money in there for China Cove and Balboa Island beach maintenance. We have some sand issues we need to address there. Water quality is another component. We've got $3.8 million programmed this year for that. Big Canyon Wash is the one we'd recently talked to you about the study session where we're addressing the selenium. We've got some diversions to do. We're working with Big Canyon Golf Course to try to figure out maybe lining their ponds or knocking down some of the selenium problems there. Buck Gully is still continuing. We're supposed to be on the Coastal Commission's agenda for June. We hope to get our permit from them and hopefully award this and be into construction in fall. So that's the goal with Buck Gully. And then we also have our last phase of our citywide central irrigation component. What we've been doing is slowly going through the city, putting all the central irrigation controllers in our parks on a satellite SCADA system where they control them and be able to program them better and be a little more efficient with our water use. Water, we have $3.6 million in improvements.
Dave, before we leave sort of the bay, you know, I know sometimes projects around the water, I mean, they just become a morass with all the regulatory agencies and so on, but it seems as if within the Back Bay there's some opportunities, John Wayne Gulch and Santa Isabel, and maybe more simple projects, less encumbered. I'm wondering, and we also have potentially good funding, where in the pipeline those kinds of smaller projects that have a shorter duration are?
They're currently, there's various ones in works. Bob Stein works in most of those areas, and we're looking at maybe mitigation, but I kind of beg to say anything in the harbor area, regulatory-wise, small or large, it's all kind of hard.
These are Back Bay ones?
Oh, Back Bay. You're still in the coastal zone. You're still in fish and game, Corps permits. So there's really no small project. They all seem to take a long time, unfortunately, to get through the process. But we can look at any individual ones, like John Wayne Gulch, if you like. Wastewater, we have $750,000, not a lot of money in this program, basically. We've got the diversions for the selenium on Big Canyon. We've got a replacement of a sewer line on St. James Place, and we have some spot treatment. We have a couple sags and point repairs we need to address in this program.
Did you skip water?
I'm sorry. I think I might have gone through that. Apologize. The 16th Street pump station, we're going to do some modifications and energy efficient retrofits on that station. We're also going to be building a major transmission line from our reservoir down into Corona Del Mar to help fire flow and distribution on MacArthur. That line will be going down MacArthur. We have a cast iron water main replacement program. That's particularly in this area around 32nd Street, the Finley track. With this one, too, we can actually reduce some costs. Some of the lines that go through this actual parcel we're not going to do because we know we're going to redevelop that, so we'll forego doing those lines and do some other ones instead. And then we've had some issues up on St. James Road with some water lines up there. We'd like to replace that water main. And wastewater, again, I just talked about. One last area is our miscellaneous area. This is $1.2 million. Most of this is rebudget. This is the money to repave the Santa Ana Heights after the assessment district is completed up there, and that should be starting relatively soon. With that, kind of summarizing our 11-12 CIP, we have 60 projects, about $51 million planned for programming in there, and these are the various categories. And I thought we added a couple slides here just to kind of give you a feel where the money's coming from. This is the new funds coming in. And I'm sorry, it's yeah, the colors of, and it's a little hard to read. I'm sorry, it's a lot of information. It's in your packet, and it'll be on the website if you want to study that. But you can see the bulk of the money there is, a lot of it's the major facilities area. Add on top of that, you've got the rebudgets, and you'll see how that comes in. We start adding that up. And then we show you a slide here with the total funds with $183 million. This would be your new funds, your rebudgets, all your encumbered money right now, also some assessment district money. And the big one there you see major facilities, $130 million. That's where a lot of our money is. That's City Hall, the Marina Park, Sunset, the big projects we're doing right now. So with that, what I'd like to do is turn over for any questions I could answer for you or things you'd like to explore further.
Council questions? Okay, thank you, Dave.
Okay.
I would just comment, I guess, working with capital most of my life, that this is a remarkable plan. It's obviously a lot of work and a lot of thought. And I think as a result of this kind of forward thinking, we have the quality of roads and systems in Newport Beach that we have. So I'm very appreciative of the work.
You know, I'd just add one other thing. We've had questions in years past about our ability to deliver projects on time, on budget, and I think this plan reflects some very significant improvements in that performance. So appreciate it.
So, Mr. Mayor and council members, we're getting near the end here. Looking ahead, again, there's a study session planned for the 14th, potential adoption on the 14th. We do have two other options in case you want more time for that. I'd like you to think about whether you have checklist items that you think I need to know about sooner rather than later, because we would talk about that on the 14th as well in order to do adoption. For the for the public's edification, the checklist is where we propose an amendment to what is in the hard-bound document here. We prepare this document probably 6 weeks in advance of this discussion here, so some of it does change. In fact, we're going to talk about something in just a moment. But where you do have things that you think I need to know about that you might want to throw on the checklist, please indeed let me know. Before I close just the overall budget section, I wanted to say just a big thank you to our admin services team, from Tracy to Susan to Dan. This was a challenging budget year, challenging to pull this all together, and I really appreciate it. So thank you. I think you're behind me. So I wanted to move into a discussion from last time about lifeguards, and maybe ask the chief to come up and Rob, too, to join me here. So obviously there's been angst, not just in the community, but somehow we seem to have generated nationwide and even worldwide attention about this issue. And I wanted to reinforce the fact that permanent lifeguarding is an important job and an important career in Newport, and I respect it greatly. It's part of our heritage, it's part of our institution, it's part of why we're a desirable community to come and visit. And in light of that, I wanted to frame the issue for you and for the public, again, with Rob Williams and Mike Morgan here. We've been working on, we've been discussing this since last time, and I want to tell you about that. So there are some core functions that we think are important, including obviously educating and preventing accidents and rescuing, and that we do have a 24-hour response. We have a callback process after hours that involves, it's called nighttime standby pay, that at least typically 2 guards receive each night. We provide supervision, training, and technical direction, especially to the seasonals. And when I'm talking about seasonals, I'm talking about the tower guards, the folks that don't work year-round. Providing underwater search and rescue, EMS, and then importantly, especially in the off-season, safety to other city personnel, including police and fire, who might work around an open water environment in an emergency. And they, of course, enforce, too, the water and beach safety regulations.
Dave, just a quick question. As we look up and down the coast, are we unique or in line with how other coastal communities act in terms of 24-hour support for a beach environment?
Most tend, Rob's reaching for the button, so I'll let Rob answer that.
We're in lines with everybody else. Some have paid systems, some don't have paid systems, but mostly, generally, every agency in the county provides a 24-hour service somehow.
When you say a paid system versus a non-paid system, help me understand that.
Well, like the Huntington Beach, for example, has a non-paid system where they just have a call, and they call people at home, and they try to get people and go down a list. It's not an emergency response.
Oh, I see. They don't compensate people for being guaranteed to be available.
And available
at any
with an
given time.
emergency vehicle and emergency response.
We also wanted to talk to you and show you more about what we think are minimum staffing guidelines for Newport. And basically, you have You're divided in three different areas. You have the West Newport area from the pier to the Santa Ana River, then the Newport Pier to the Wedge, and then CDM. And you can see the tower locations as well as patrol divisions and the lifeguard headquarters. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more with this next slide. So basically those guidelines are between, let's call it the off-season, October 1 through March 31. There's a lifeguard in each of the three areas. There's one person in dispatch, and there's one section chief, and that's 5 people. April through September, you start to add the seasonal staff. One lifeguard, one person on boats, one section chief. The seasonal staff tends to work the dispatch during this period. Plus, you have up to 210 seasonal staff, including typically 10 to 34 rookies, depending on the year. Really depends on who comes back. In a down economic time, we tend to have more people coming back. And then you have the junior guard participants, which are up to 1,200 per year. So that's kind of the staffing that we're set up for. Often asked the question, how does 17 or 13, or we'll talk about the 10.72, translate to 5 people? And that's because staffing is indeed dynamic. It changes with weather, season, ocean conditions, the day of the week, even when spring break is, and the number of seasonals that are out there. But we do staff 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So that staffing needs to accommodate those shifts. It needs to accommodate vacations, training, and leave time, whether that's family leave, sick leave, or other types of leave. The summer shift, the typical schedule is a 4-10. The winter shift can be less, but I think the question is how much less. And we've certainly had that dialogue and discussion in the community the past couple of weeks. So the discussion items I'm going to go over with you are what I'm going to call the lifeguard organizational structure, and I'm going to include CERT in it to have an apple-to-apple comparison. There is a current, what we do now. That's going to be current. Then there's proposed in your budget. I'm going to call that alternative A. And then there's an alternative proposal that I'm going to call alternative B. The items in blue font where I come across those mean they're subject to negotiations or meet and confer processes, and those involve the MOUs, Memorandum of Understanding with our labor groups. The LMA, Lifeguard Management Association MOU is closed right now. It expires at the end of 2011. The Association of Newport Beach Ocean Lifeguards, or ANBAL, expired at the end of April, so that's an open MOU. What I'm going to compare are 3 different alternatives. This is the current staffing here, about 17 FTEs, full-time equivalents, current budget of about $4.55 million. There is an I'm putting them in reverse order. There's an alternative B that has 13 FTEs, saves about $600,000 from this 4.55. That's a 13% reduction. Alternative A, which is in the budget, is a 10.72 FTEs. That's a $700,000 savings. That's about a 15% reduction.
Is alternate A the one that was presented last
That's
meeting?
correct. That's the one that's in the budget. And it's in reverse just because I think you can step it down a little bit better. I'm going to talk, I'm going to go through now those, basically what we do now. Again, 17 full-time people, if you include the community preparedness position for comparisons. They supervise about 32 part-time, full-time equivalents. That translates into hundreds of people, because remember, those are part-time hours. Our staffing are 3 BCs, battalion chiefs, 3 lifeguard captains, 9, 4 lifeguard officers, and then the cadets, trainees, lifeguards 1, 2, and 3. Those are the seasonals. Those staffs work about the 410 schedules. They overlap on Wednesday. They receive nighttime standby pay and overtime. The net lifeguard cost, again, is $4.55 million.
Well, we're talking about nighttime. I've just been sitting here thinking that what sort of emergencies do we have? Our beaches are supposed to close at 10. There are not supposed to be people on there. So presumably people are not surfing and swimming. Obviously there could be a boat accident. But do we have a lot of activity in the evening?
Not a lot, but yes, we do have activities. Like you said, we have boating activity at night. We also have people that are fishing on the jetties. We just recently had a fisherman on the jetty that was injured that we'd had to extricate him off the jetty at night.
But was this after the beach was closed?
Yes, that is correct. Also, we had the tsunami in March, which we were in at 1:30 in the morning, making sure we were in lines with Orange County and closing our beaches at 5 a.m., which they wanted. So we do have a number of responses that obviously increases during the summertime. And there are people in need, and plus there are boat fires in the water in the harbors that we respond to a number of times to help our public safety employees of fire and police.
And you had a plane crash.
That is correct.
So next, I'm going to compare back to alternative A. So this is what's in the proposed budget. And that is a proposal for 10.72. I'm going to flash back and forth. So from 17 to 10.72, that again includes what a different position called the Junior Guard Administrator. It's a non-sworn position, as well as coordinating CERT. That would supervise 33 part-time FTEs, flashing back again, so a little bit more FTEs. The position change summary is you'd add a chief position, you'd switch the BCs to section chiefs, you delete 3 lifeguard captain positions, 1 lifeguard boat captain position, and you'd replace the 4 lifeguard officer positions with 4 part-time lifeguard supervisor positions. So this net change is shown there. The net savings, it also fully eliminates nighttime standby pay. The net savings is $700,000 a year
Dave,
from the $4.55 million.
I'm a little confused. Are these just nomenclature changes, or is there compensation change associated with these, for example, BC to section chief and so deleting the captain but replacing, what?
I'll show you the org chart in a little bit. The change in nomenclature from BC to section chief, there isn't a salary adjustment associated with that. There would be a promotion, or whoever becomes the chief, that would be an increased salary from if that person were coming up from the BC level. But basically, it's a change in nomenclature.
As I understand it, though, within those details, essentially, the upshot is there'd be 3 salary increases.
Not necessarily.
For 3 employees.
Well, remember, we have some vacancies now. So in our current structure, those employees would be allowed to promote up, encouraged to promote up. That's the process. So in our current structure, I think the key difference would be, how is this different from the current structure? The main difference is that 1 new chief position for that promotional opportunity. I'm going to talk now about alternative B, and you haven't seen this before. So this is a total supervisory personnel of 13. So again, going from 17 currently to 13, it'd supervise about 31.17 part-time FTEs. It would still add the chief's position. It would still maintain the BC to section chiefs, or maybe another title position. It would delete 1 boat captain. It would delete 2 lifeguard captains. It would delete 2 lifeguard officer positions. It would change the standby pay for nighttime, but not eliminate it. It would change scheduling and overtime practices. The net change is a deletion of 4 full-time positions. The net savings is about $600,000 a year. So a little less than Plan A, still significant. The most significant changes are, let's get back to my table here, is in this, the fact that we're going down from the 17 FTE current to the 13. So that's still a significant change. That's where you get most of those savings from.
Yeah, I have a question on the standby. We have people who are on site. Is that correct? During the evening hours? No, nobody's on site.
They're at home.
Oh, all right. So that's all we have.
Nighttime standby means you stay at home, or you
Right.
stay by a phone
I didn't know if we
in
had
town.
that in addition to people
Right.
on site. Okay.
Dave, another clarification. Under alternative A, we've got this nomenclature of FTE always throws me. We've got 10.72, what you call FTEs. Those are in effect permanent employees, either full-time or assumed to be part-time but permanent.
That's correct.
And supervising 33.37 FTEs. Well, so if I add that up, that's about 44 FTEs, full-time equivalents altogether, right?
I have a chart that shows that. Yeah, 44.17.
Okay, so
Yeah.
alternative B is 40.
You're going to catch me on a math error. Hopefully it's
Yeah.
not a big one,
Well-
but no, I've tried to check it twice. Sorry, this has been
Yeah, because this is a little different than I expected to see.
Okay.
Because alternative B adds up to 44.17, and alternative A adds up to 44.
It should be a little bit less. There could be I believe I checked my math, but I know I did, but let me go back.
All right, well, I'm just looking at this written
Okay.
stuff here, and it looks different.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I have a question. On the changes that are being proposed for alternative B, so for example, whatever the changes may be, the nighttime pay or the overtime, can those changes also be made to Proposal A? I mean, wouldn't they be impacting procedures and overtime?
Well, yes and no. And the no part is that this is a different staffing model based on a certain amount of full-time personnel all year round. So if you didn't have those 4 people all year round, you have the potential for not being able to make the same adjustments to overtime and scheduling, especially when it comes to training those folks. Part of Alternative B allows for more training to occur during working hours instead of paid on overtime.
Okay. And then how would the public have confidence that those changes would be permanent and then result in permanent implementation, cost reductions?
That's something that you need to task me with and the fire chief and whoever is if that's approved, the section chief for lifeguards. It's our responsibility to appropriately ensure that these are managed within budget. You have the ability also to adopt a reduced level of funding for those budget items. And that's something that you control entirely and that we manage. And if we have a problem, we have to come back to you for permission to change that.
So
Under A and B, is the adds 1 chief position, is that an open position or promotional?
If you're referring to the division chief position,
The position?
Right.
Position change summary on the chart.
that's a
there.
promotional position within the department.
So not an open recruitment?
No, sir. One aspect of that position as well, it's a promotion. It will be a raise in pay. But because that position is established as the executive of the lifeguard division, that person would be one of the night standby people. So that's where some of the savings occur, and that person doesn't get a night standby pay. That's part of their job description.
Dave, I think some of the frustration here is that the numbers don't appear to add up. I mean, one replaces 4 lifeguard officer positions with 4 part-time lifeguard supervisors. The other one does not. Yet the savings difference is $100,000. So maybe you can help us just to understand the real differences between the two and how the money works.
Well, let me continue on that, because I think a more fulsome discussion of Alternative B is warranted. You do end up, for instance, eliminating the cadet program in Alternative B. You change the staffing so that it's more dynamic, and that way you can indeed reduce some of that overtime pay. You end what's currently the Wednesday overlap. It also involves seasonals, that right now in our agreement with Anball, seasonal has the right to stay a longer period of time, even if weather conditions would suggest that he or she should go home. So this proposes changing that. It is in blue font. It's subject to negotiation. We'd also reduce some of those seasonal reserve levels, as well as the callback hours. And I continue on. Some of the significant savings, too, is equipment changes. We'd reduce the boat deployment by 1 and not replace the 3rd boat. We'd reduce the vehicle fleet by 2. Arguably, these are changes that could happen in Alternative A as well. But I want to step back a moment to offer that I think there is a certain standard of care and of service that is appropriate for Newport Beach, and I think jumping to A is a paradigm shift, maybe a shift too far, but I certainly respect your opinion on that. In this sense, I think Alternative B is a gentler, probably a more appropriate step, more reflective with the needs of the community, yet still achieving significant savings. And then there's another $90,000 in savings by changing the way we do standby pay. That assigns it to the lowest officer level pay instead of a captain level pay. Even if a captain were to receive that nighttime standby pay, they would be paid at officer level. And then the overtime pay changes, and then we have about a $600,000 reduction in that.
Councilmember Curry?
Well, for all of that wandering around in the woods, what I think it all means is that we've been having this discussion in the community about whether or not we're going to reduce our full-time winter lifeguards by 4 positions. And what you're saying is that within $100,000, we can simply manage ourselves more efficiently and keep those positions. Is that more or less what it is?
Keep all but one
All
of the
but
existing positions, yes. There'd be, unless there's no changes to the personnel, there'd be one layoff in this model.
Well, let me observe this. You know, people pulled the playbook out and pulled and said, if we make any cuts at all, public safety is going to be damaged. And in the result of that, we had a lot of national focus. And I expect we're going to be on Al Jazeera with this story before we're done, about what lifeguards get paid and how much overtime we have. And the overtime is a function of holding some open positions and how we manage the department. Now, what didn't make the national news in its breathless way is that the fact that we held those 3 open positions is that overall the cost of having the overtime was actually less than the cost of what those 3 positions would have been. And in fact, our public safety departments came in $1 million under budget this year. So that's probably not going to make the national news. But nonetheless, it shows that if you simply apply a little management and take away some of these silly rules that make people do things inefficiently, everybody's been saying, I want the status quo in terms of lifeguard protection. Well, on Wednesday, it's 13 people. On Thursday, it's 7 people. On Friday, it's 5 people. And on Saturday, it's 3 people. So which status quo do you want? You know, and that is a function of some of these rules that, frankly, need to get very much fixed. And I'm glad to see the Chief has got some ideas on how to do that and how to reform this so that we can make sure that the beaches are safe, but we can also use our personnel in a very efficient way. And I think that, and I applaud both staff and our bargaining units and you who have come up with some ideas on how we can do this more efficiently and more effectively. And I think probably if we just put a little more pencil to paper, we'll probably be able to make Alternative B save an extra $100,000 too, given what I think I know about it. But beyond that, I think we made some good progress here.
Council, Mayor Pro Tem Gardner.
Last time, there was a big concern because there were 4 part-time lifeguard supervisors, and there was a question of how you can guarantee that you will have these part-timers ready when you need them, because teachers no longer have quite the same convenient schedules we would like them to have as lifeguards. This takes care of that?
Yes. You all sent me back with that very much on my mind with regard to those 4 part-time positions and how we could guarantee that those positions would be, you know, the same quality that we're used to providing to our beachgoers. And that's really one of the main genesis behind Alternative B is we went back, worked with Chief Williams, and how can we save that same kind of money and still maintain those 4 consistent full-time lifeguard employees that we're used to having here in Newport Beach. And I think we've done a good job of coming back with a plan that comes real close to the savings but maintains those 4 positions.
Councilmember Daigle.
Well, if anyone ever wants any pointers on making national news, always available. But you're right, it's not going to make the news about the management, and part of this plan is really contingent upon that there is really tight management of the operations, and that, in fact, this isn't temporary window dressing, but that these are things that are going to be managed very tightly. But I think what did make the news and was really an outgrowth of restructuring, because it's really not newsworthy whether you go from 13 to 10 or these kinds of details, but what was the pay scale. And so that, therefore, on the 14th, you know, I would like to see more of those details as to what those adjustments are going to be. And I think it was the compensation that didn't sync up with people. And part of it is the entrenched compensation systems that are in play, where one jurisdiction pays this amount, and even though that jurisdiction may be on the brink of insolvency or suffering from large unfunded liabilities, it's been that system. And so I think the bigger picture here, too, is pay scales, and I think that, you know, our council is going to have some fresh perspectives on compensation, because moving forward, some of these measures they're just not sustainable. So I look forward to that discussion on pay scale. And then the other item was with regards to the city manager original proposal. It did seem to come about by objective means. You know, where you sat down, you said, look, these are the core functions, these are the non-core functions. What became of that analysis in terms of there seemed to be an assumption that you know, painting towers and this kind of a thing was where the cuts were coming from, is that personnel devoted to non-core activities was being reduced. So could you respond to that, please?
Well, I still think the proposal, let's call it again, Proposal A, is a viable proposal. I think it reflects a model that, though, that arguably the community isn't ready for. And I think there are some things that need to be tested over time, such as the viability of a part-time permanent position. And I think arguably if council still is interested in pursuing that, I am. I think there's a way to do that without harming current jobs. You take your time in doing that, and we do have time. This is a 2-year proposal and I asked the fire chief, and that includes lifeguards, to come back with a certain target number. They were able to achieve it with this target. I've been obligated and promised not to quibble with some of those changes when they are viable and sustainable. So I'm willing to recommend this as an addition to the checklist, that alternative B be placed on there, that it would be implemented sooner rather than later to start to control some of those things that you mentioned, Councilmember Daigle. I do think that because some of these are meet and confer and negotiation items, we should request a reopener with LMA, and that we should implement those negotiations within ANBAL as well, and that you task me and the chief with monitoring those things that we're concerned about. I'm concerned about them too.
Yes.
Instead of turning my mic on, sorry.
Order again.
Yes or no?
Actually, I abstained. I guess I would like to echo Councilman Daigle's comments. I, like all the other council people, received a significant amount of mail that was in support of not damaging the value of life in Newport Beach. But I also was cornered and pushed against the wall by a lot of people physically who had a totally different picture of where we are in our lifeguards. And there is something that is just passed outside of the fairness level with respect to the salaries. And I think we have to do something about that as we deal with the situation that we're in. And so I would push very strongly to have that be a very strong part, a very important part of the reorganization that we look for in the staff.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Curry.
Well, again, I agree with that, but I think very specifically the issue is less the salaries and more the overtime. $56,000 of the legendary $200,000 salaries was a function of overtime. And I know that we saw another article about that in fire. We have a proposal from both the fire chief and the police chief this year that cuts $1 million, I believe, in each department based on better overtime management. And what I would like to see as part of this whole checklist is, in addition to lifeguards, a report on overtime citywide and about the steps we're going to take to reduce that through better deployment, through better staffing patterns, et cetera. Because what we've demonstrated here is that you actually can keep those 4 positions, or keep 3 of the 4 positions, simply by having a better system of work rules and a more rational, logical way of providing the service. And that's, at the end of the day, what we're all about here, is to provide the service in a better way, and also to stop these examples where, not so much because of salaries, but certainly because of the overtime, people have compensation that is not deemed, that doesn't pass the fairness standard here or anyplace else. So that's the thing we've got to focus on how we do this. I believe this is a management issue. And I frankly think it's a very good thing that we can keep safe beaches and keep the standard of care that we have, and do it at a substantial savings of between $600,000 and $700,000. If I was going to give you direction on what to do over the course of the next 2 weeks coming back, is let's sit down and let's think a little bit more about these numbers, because I don't think that extra $100,000, maybe we need to talk about pension reform and about what we can do there in terms of those costs in consultation with our bargaining units to close that gap. I think that's a very important question to address. And at the same time, it allows us to keep our beaches safe the way people want them. But the question's been raised, and I think the public's spoken pretty loud and clear, is that they expect us to deal with these management issues related to overtime and the cost of these services that they think are disproportional in today's labor market.
Councilman Selich.
Yes, thank you. I think I got a pretty good handle on alternative A and B, but I still need clarification on one thing, and that's on that chief position. What's the justification for the new chief position? I don't quite understand that and how it fits in both those alternatives.
This is something that Chief Morgan suggested, and I agree with. I think the lifeguards need one individual who is the go-to guy or gal that is in charge of that department. That's a typical model. I think it allows an important promotional career advancement opportunity through lifeguarding that we don't have today, and that as a result, the organization that tends to be more diffuse and doesn't have the same focus as it could if it had its own chief. Again, that chief would still report to the fire chief, though.
And then how does that line up with the other positions in the fire department?
There would be
Is there
three.
like there are other equivalents? And where
Yes,
does that stand?
there would be three of those non-represented positions. One would deal with fire operations and EMS, one with the lifeguard division, and the other with prevention and preparedness. And just to add on with what Mr. Gibbs
And
said.
then we took the one chief that was, no, that was in the police department. I'm confusing the police department with fire.
But this is, if your point is, this is an at-will position. It goes outside of the represented unit, it becomes at-will. And
Non-union, non-CSB.
Right.
position.
Allowed for the first time under the charter amendment that was approved in November.
Okay, I did have a couple comments to contribute here, and first off, the natural process that we're involved here is one where a proposal is made with the understanding, really, I think from everyone, that there's no one proposal that could be viewed as right and correct first time out of the box, and so I'm not surprised there was additional discussion here, and frankly, some additional creativity involved to still try and capture savings in the appropriate way. And I like the idea that some of those ideas came from the people that are doing the work. That's really the best way to get ideas to save money, because then there's ownership in the solution. Having said all of that, I also liked the $700,000 targeted savings that was initially proposed here. And I still believe and still feel and encourage you strongly to find a way to get that number. I think I can see a number of areas here in which there could be further discussion that could achieve that. I don't think we're very far away. And while I'm the one that questioned this permanent seasonal, it's still a concept that I think could have value to the city over time, and I wouldn't mind seeing a test of that, of the viability of that concept. There are lots of industries that have part-time permanent people, permanent seasonal people, and get along quite nicely. And I'm a little reluctant to just jump to that as the full solution here, but I wouldn't mind seeing a test of that, because I see application perhaps for that elsewhere in the city, and would like to be able to get a better view of how viable that solution is. So my view is, let's get the savings. We're going to have, it isn't just this year, it's next year. We've got it's back to the future next year. I mean, we're going to have another year where we're going to have to work very, very hard to be able to find savings to keep the city just in place with its program viability. And so we need to keep pushing. And I'd encourage you to still get to your target somewhere or another before we're done. Any other comments on lifeguards? Okay. Where are we with your presentation, Dave? Is this the last of it?
Well, I thought it might be appropriate just to ask Police Chief Johnson to come up and just we have a proposed change to the DARE discussion. We don't have news on ABLE yet, but we do have, the chief's around. I'm sure he's back there somewhere. No, he's hiding. Then I can tell you what it is. He is going to propose moving to a non-sworn position to provide DARE, drug abuse resistance education. Within the current budget, it would be a community services officer. He's identified a curriculum or two that will work well, so we will have that as a replacement, actually, and cheaper than what we even proposed as a substitute model for the budget. So we'll see how that goes for a year. That's what we'll propose in the checklist.
Creativity is abounding. Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
That's all right. This person will have a uniform on,
They will have a uniform on,
But
it'll
won't-
look
but
like
won't
someone, they just won't have a gun.
but won't be packing heat.
Right, no, right.
Okay. Glad to hear that. All right. If there's nothing else then from council or staff, we should have some comments from the public here. So I'll open the public comment period. Please come on down. We are anxious to get into closed session here, so if you got comments, get in the queue or get ready to come on down.
Well, we'll hope we'll help expedite this. Good afternoon, Mayor Hen and council members. My name is Karen Tringali. I reside in Corona Del Mar. I'm a certified emergency volunteer, response volunteer. Along with being certified in CERT, I hold additional advanced certifications in radio communications and mutual aid services. 3 resident volunteers with similar qualifications will be speaking this afternoon on behalf of several hundred additional Newport Beach resident volunteers who have been certified as community emergency response members. Therefore, even though it's late in the afternoon, we might be asking for a slight consideration for the 5-minute limit for these 3 speakers.
Actually, I hope you can stay within the 5-minute limit.
We'll keep it as tight as we can. Our purpose today is to share our concerns regarding the proposed fire department organizational change that directly impacts the city's emergency management services coordinator, the community preparedness coordinator, their respective programs, duties, responsibilities, and ultimately the safety of our residents, businesses, commercial facilities, city infrastructures, and visitors. The fire department organization chart presented at the May 10th study session contains a division entitled Prevention and Preparedness under the command of an assistant fire chief. That division's stated goal, and I'll quote, is to safeguard the community from fire, environmental hazards through programs providing adherence to regulations, public education, through a comprehensive emergency management program which includes emergency management plan, emergency operations center, employee response programs, public education programs, and trained certified emergency response team members. The sphere of influence for the Prevention and Preparedness Division is 14.8 square miles of land-based homes, businesses, commercial facilities, and city infrastructure. The city's emergency management services function and personnel report up through that structure under the current plan and A and B. However, the May 10th proposal moves the community preparedness function and personnel, historically part of prevention and preparedness, to an entirely different division and an entirely different reporting structure under the lifeguards. That division's stated goal and sphere of influence, and I'll quote, is to protect up to 10 million beach visitors of Newport Beach of 6.2 million miles of ocean, 6.2 miles of ocean and 2.5 miles of bay beaches with preventive action and medical assistance. Every day of the year, lifeguards ensure the safety and provide customer service to visitors on the beach, boardwalk, piers, and in the ocean. As certified members of the city's Emergency Preparedness Volunteer Corps, we are concerned with the risks and ramifications of separating the city's emergency management services function from the community preparedness function and creating 2 separate reporting structures for these historically aligned functions. The City of Newport Beach has been recognized at both the state and national level for its innovative and comprehensive emergency planning programs, including its adherence to FEMA and the National Incident Management System organization and reporting structure. Additionally, in the most recent 2010 Customer Service Satisfaction Survey and benchmarking studies conducted by the city at the request of City Council, we found that public safety and public safety services were ranked as high-value attributes, and that, in fact, the city has improved its rankings in these areas over its 2007 studies. And I'll quote, the public safety services with the highest levels of satisfaction were, 1, emergency medical paramedic services, 95% up from 90%, local fire protection services and programs at 94%, and lifeguard services and programs 93% up from 85%. As certified members of the city's Emergency Preparedness Volunteer Corps, we feel that the proposed organizational changes puts at risk all the city's work and accomplishments in these important public safety, public service areas as validated by the survey of its resident voters and the state and national organizations. As certified members of the city's Emergency Preparedness Volunteer Corps, we also feel that the proposed organizational structure puts Newport Beach at risk when it comes to its effectiveness in its mutual aid arrangements with neighboring cities. Our mutual aid cities of Huntington Beach, Seal Beach, Laguna Beach, and others maintain the FEMA NIMS recommended organizational structure for prevention and preparedness. In a disaster or emergency where we will rely on our mutual aid partners, having a consistent organization and reporting structure will go a long way in effectively managing the Joint Incident Command Center and our shared resources. 2 minutes.
Actually, no, Karen, I'm sorry, but it appears to me that you have a total of 20 minutes worth of presentations here, and we have a very full closed session agenda.
If I can borrow 3 minutes from my other presenters, so we collapse it in total for 15 minutes?
All right. Everybody understand that?
All right, thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you. As I mentioned at the beginning, that we have 3 speakers who will address on this topic. You can see that we have a good turnout in the audience, and I'm just going to ask folks to raise their hands for those that are here on this specific topic. Thank you. You should also know that we contacted over 400 certified resident volunteers and polled them on the topic of the proposed fire department organizational changes, specifically as it relates to the city's emergency management and community preparedness functions and personnel. We have a total of 880 CERT graduates. We contacted over 400 by email. So far, we have received 150 responses opposed to this proposal. The opposition response is statistically reliable at the 99% confidence level for the entire CERT population. When you take into account this population is highly interactive and highly influential with residents throughout the entire city, we could extrapolate that their opinions will be shared by a significant multiplier of voters. The results of that information would certainly be made available to you if you wish. In summary, as certified members of the city's Emergency Response Volunteer Corps, we believe that transferring the Community Preparedness Program and its leadership out of the Prevention and Preparedness Division, separating it functionally and organizationally from the city's management services, will result in the following: a reduction in effective short and long-term emergency management and preparedness programs and resources which directly impact residents, visitors, business facilities, and city infrastructure. We believe that a recruitment and the reduction in outreach efforts jeopardizing the continued growth of this volunteer corps. We currently have 880 certified volunteers covering 86,000 residents. We believe there will be a diminishment in focus and prominence for recognition at the state and federal level, which will have a negative impact on grant funding opportunities. And finally, a diluted and fractured chain of command that introduces unwarranted risks, whether dealing either internally or as mutual aid partners with other cities. Thank you for your time. Appreciate the concession.
Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Strange. I'm a Newport Beach resident, and I'm concerned with the safety of the beaches both through the summer months and the off-season months with the proposed cuts to lifeguards. With these concerns, over 1,700 people have signed the petitions regarding their concern of the beaches and the safety of the beaches, and I'd like to give this to City Council if someone. Thank you.
Just so we can, if you would.
May I have your name, please?
Gary Standard. I'm a resident of Corona Del Mar. Mr. Mayor, Council, and City Manager, we have a turnout here of just some representative folks in CERT tonight, and so we, to respect your time, elected for 3 of us, not 4 of us, 3 of us to speak on this subject. I'd like to give you some insight into what our CERT training qualifications and background are, because perhaps Council and staff doesn't fully understand what we do for the city. I'm a CERT member and attended the first CERT class in Newport Beach conducted over 10 years ago. As a result of that training, I joined our city's RACES group, eventually becoming the chief radio officer of the Newport Beach RACES group. RACES is an acronym for Radio Amateur Civil Emergency Service, is authorized by the FCC to aid government agencies by supplying emergency communications in time of disasters via ham radio. The Newport Beach RACES group was established in Newport Beach in 1982 by the Newport Beach Police Department. Our radio room is adjacent to the PD's 911 call center, dispatch room, the PD's Department Emergency Operating Center, and our city's EOC. We supply emergency backup communications to the police and to the fire departments and all of the city departments. 4 years ago, working with the fire department's emergency services coordinator and the community preparedness coordinator and my command structure at the PD, we established a CERT communications division. We call that CERTCOM. CERTCOMs are CERT volunteers that obtain their ham license through CERT-run training programs, pay a fee for this training, and spend over $500 or more of their personal funds for radio equipment. The CERT program has trained over 70 CERT members who have obtained their ham licenses and operate side by side with our RACES group. Our CERT communicators extend our emergency communications reach into all areas of Newport Beach, HOAs, and communities, and provide emergency communications back to our city's EOC. Our CERT communicators participate with our RACES group in weekly, monthly, and quarterly training. When the Calexico seismic event was well felt here in Newport Beach in April 2010, our RACES and CERT communicators came up on the air to report a windshield survey for all the major communities within 15 minutes of the shaker. We were on standby during the tsunami event caused by the earthquake in Japan. In times of major earthquake, all communications in this city and this county will be disrupted for hours and likely days, including our city's 800 megahertz system. In 2010, all our CERT volunteers contributed 20,000 hours of service to our city. Newport Beach CERT volunteers donated 500 hours of service at the Santiago fire in 2007 and 350 hours of service at the Freeway Complex fire in 2008. We currently have 880 active CERT graduates, and over 1,250 have completed the entire program since its inception in 1999. The Newport Beach CERT program is easily the most popular volunteer program in this city. In times of a disaster in this city, our volunteer hours are reimbursable by the state and FEMA at an average of $20 an hour, which goes directly into the city's general fund. Our FEMA-approved CERT training includes disaster preparedness, disaster psychology and team organization, disaster medical operations, fire suppression, terrorism awareness, and light search and rescue. All CERT volunteers have passed a detailed background check. At maximum, there are no more than 39 sworn firefighters on duty at any shift in this city. Over 880 CERT, RACES, and CERT communicators is a force multiplier of 22 times the 39 on-duty firefighters. CERT volunteers provide significant resource pool that is invaluable to this city, including but not limited to emergency call-out assistance for Newport Beach. When officially called out, CERT volunteers provide assistance to the fire department in its windshield survey immediately after an emergency or disaster, especially in those areas that the fire department may not be able to reach within its limited resources. Provide emergency first aid to injured citizens when the fire department cannot respond immediately. Organize residents who need help and direction and cannot get it from the fire department during the early critical hours of a disaster or emergency. They provide calming and efficient resources and information to local neighbors until city personnel become available. Provide emergency call-out assistance for our mutual aid cities. In summary, our CERT volunteers believe reducing the job of our community preparedness coordinator to 50% of his time and splitting his focus and mission with the junior lifeguard program would reduce the effectiveness and focus of our CERT group and emergency preparedness in this city. To quote our city manager today, he said, "The standard of care and service that's expected at a level in this city, Newport Beach, He also referred to, in regards to a chief and the lifeguards, that not having that would be cause diffused and less focused attention. I believe that's what's going to happen in our CERT program.
Okay, Gary, you're well over your time. Is that it? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
I
Hi,
think
Ted.
I'm out of time. I'm Ted Cooper, Balboa Island. I've given most of my time to them, so thank you very much. Most of you know that I provide outsourcing services as well as management and technology consulting services to cities and counties around the country. I've yet to find a city as well run as this one, so I applaud you for that, and I thank you for that. I'm proud to be a CERT member and a CERT-COM member, and I also participated in the technology task force last year and addressed you then. CERT program, I think you'll all agree, is a very powerful one we can all be proud of. I know at least one of the council members here is a CERT member. So I just ask that you take a very hard look before you do anything that reduces the resources, the support that is currently being provided by you to the CERT program. And anything that buries us deeper into the organization, thus degrading the ability to communicate and respond if and when, and there probably will be, an emergency. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ted. Do we have additional public comment on closed session items or any other item? Please come ahead.
Good afternoon, Council. My name's Josh Yoakum. I represent the Association of Newport Beach Ocean Lifeguards, essentially the part-time staff or referred to seasonals or tower guards. And although I'd like to preface it, I appreciate the process here where we've kind of bounced around ideas and have landed here maybe with this alternative B up in the air. I do want to say that it significantly reduces the city's capacity to save lives. A discussion that essentially began with pension contribution and overtime expenditures has now landed on what essentially would be a dramatic cut to what are eyes on the water. During the summertime, we've basically traded consistency and availability from what the original thoughts were during the winter. We lack, with the new plan, or I believe it's called Alternative A, consistency and availability concerns for the wintertime. We've now traded that into the summer. By removing 35 potentially lifeguards out there, I pose this thought. During the busy summer months, and we often bring up surge capacity, let's bring up 4th of July. If we can't staff towers, now look at what we have at hand and the safety concern there. And we're chopping the lowest of the low, a part-time lifeguard, to make dollars and cents even out to fit square pegs into round holes. So I really want to leave that thought there. I know that this is all a process, and we're probably not going to land on this, but I want to make sure you hear my concern with it. Also, to bring up the thoughts you had about year-round part-time, I do think that's a viable option. I represent 182 seasonal lifeguards or part-time lifeguards, and of that, we have over 40 with 3,000 plus hours working within the city's capacity as a lifeguard. Those are very talented, well-qualified individuals, and of that, 40 plus, we have 25% of them EMT certified. So these are people who have a professional acumen, who have a love for public safety, and I think you'll be interested to know that many of these people move on to become firefighters or police officers. These are motivated individuals who enjoy the ocean, enjoy helping the public, and I think it would really be beneficial to open discussions to consider year-round part-time, at least before moving to a sacrifice of staff during the summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
I'll be very quick. My name's Peter Addison. I've met a couple of you, and I think I've spoken to you, Michael, on the phone, and I know Dave and I have spent some time to talk about ABLE. Now, I'm sitting here just to really say to you guys that, what we're trying to do, I started out as a resident in Newport Beach concerned about losing the helicopter. It's suddenly spun around now where I'm the businessman trying to buy the 3 helicopters. I assure you, I sit here on behalf of my family and my neighbors, not as a businessman trying to buy 3 helicopters. I already own one. Having 3 isn't really what I set out to do. It is something that I would do and would consider with our neighbors to ensure that ABLE stays around. I was hearing the lifeguards talk, and I come from Australia, as you can tell. The lifeguards actually have their own helicopter in Australia because it's so important as they go up and down the coast to look for people, look for sharks and other things, that it's really important. the fact that we're eliminating the helicopter service without even trying to put an RFP out in play, to me, just doesn't seem right. And what we're really asking for is the time to continue to keep ABLE going just for 8 weeks. 8 weeks. This program's been going long, obviously, before I got to this country, and long before many of you guys have been serving as council members. And council members before obviously felt that it was a worthwhile cause, which is why it's been around for many, many years. To just give us 8 weeks to go away and put an RFP together, it can be run more efficiently. You're absolutely 100% right. I'm not going to sit here and debate that, and I think I've said that both to Costa Mesa and to you guys, that it can be run more efficiently. We can keep the cost down on that machine, and we can make sure that it's there for us when we need it. As opposed to the Huntington Beach, as I heard Costa Mesa was looking at using Huntington Beach as a viable option, it really isn't a viable option. I think the city deserves its own helicopter service. I've been appreciative that it actually does have one. And we'd really like to encourage the city council members to just give us the time. And by the way, it may not be us that ends up with the RFP. I've been overwhelmed by the amount of people that have spoken to me from outside the state and inside the state that would really like to look at this RFP and really making an efficient program. So all I can ask from you guys as a member, and got a lot of support and a lot of community support, that we really want the time to be able to do that. And I've asked Costa Mesa, so I guess I came down to ask you guys if we could have something like 8 weeks to keep this program going. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Brent?
Hello, Brent Jacobson, Lifeguard Management Association. Just wanted to speak on 3 points, actually 2, just because I brought them up last time, and I think it's important because Dave really took them very seriously, and Councilman Curry touched on them. And we had 2 big concerns, and that was consistent supervision and them being available all year round, because we've invested a lot of money and training in our younger supervisors, and this Plan B keeps that in play. Our investment is protected in those people's training, and we're going to have that consistent supervision piece of the puzzle, and that's a huge benefit of Plan B. The other one that Dave, or Mr. Kiff, challenged us with, was very important to him, was the safety of the junior lifeguard program, and Plan B solves that with its flexibility, provides us that captain level safety supervision on the beach those 2 months the program are in session, and I think that's huge. It eliminates one of our biggest concerns. So, and the third thing was, a couple times in the middle of the night I've been off Inspiration Point in the dark swimming around, and there's nothing like ABLE lighting up the water and making me feel, oh, great, someone sees me, I can wave to them, I can tell them I need help. So from a safety team standpoint, we definitely appreciate ABLE. Thanks.
Thanks, Brent. Other public comment on closed session items or any other items? Okay, seeing none, before we adjourn, I do want to acknowledge the passion and feeling of importance that the CERT graduates bring from their program and to the city. There's no doubt of that. And I'm sure that the city manager has some thoughts about this, and perhaps at the next session we can take a minute and just make sure we understand clearly what's being proposed and address some of the concerns that were raised here today.
I think it'd be timely, actually, for me and the fire chief to have a meeting with all the CERT folks that are interested and discuss that in the interim.
I think that's a great idea, because I think there's a lot of speculative concern here that perhaps could be cleared up with a better review of the facts. So with that, any other comments from council? Then we'll adjourn into closed session. Thank you.